Okay, thanks everyone for joining. And I know Ong and Abraham are recording this talk for others that are not able to join, and those are across time zones, especially in California and other places. So I did not include here, but you're all welcome to reach out to me, call me, text, or email me later anytime. And Ong and Abraham will provide you my contact information. So I'm Akhila Reddy, and I'm a physician in MD Anderson. But most importantly, I'm a mother to two beautiful children with autism. And I know the title says parenting a special child, and I specially mentioned only one special child there because no child with autism is similar to another child with autism. Every child is different. So I have two different journeys with two different children. So thank you again for inviting me, Ibrahim and Ong. So for those who don't know, this is a little bit about autism. The most recent numbers are quite staggering. If you see there, 1 in 36 children are now being diagnosed with autism. And back when my children were diagnosed, 2005 was when I had my first son. The estimates were 1 in 150 kids. And it's more prevalent in boys. So more boys are being diagnosed than girls with autism. Higher prevalence, and of course, in Black, Hispanic, and Asian Americans. And also the Black autistic children and autistic girls are more likely to have an intellectual disability along with a diagnosis of autism. And nobody knows why the prevalence has been increasing decade after decade after decade, but it's definitely alarming. And so what are the classic hallmarks? And most of you will recognize an autistic person, and it's not always what we see in the movies, but usually they don't make eye contact. They have really poor social skills, and they have some repetitive behaviors, like stimming or, rocking back and forth, or having some strange movements or same words that they repeat again and again. And they have impaired communication. They can't really communicate effectively. And they have very narrowed or restricted interests. They're only interested in trains or airplanes or some particular thing as such, traveling. And we don't know why kids have autism. We don't know what causes it. It's genetic, it's an environmental, it's a combination of both. And we know there's definitely a genetic focus, because a lot of people like me have a couple of children or 3 or 4 children with autism, or it runs in the families. There's an autistic child or an autistic adult, and then there's the next generation, there's autism in the children. So we know there's a genetic component. And autism is a spectrum. So, not every child is like another, like we discussed. We have children that are really, really mild autism, where maybe you don't even recognize it unless you spend enough time with them. And then you have others that are quite severely autistic, that they're rocking in one place, banging their head, or biting, or making some vocal sounds that are not really appropriate in a social setting. So you can easily recognize some children that are on the other end of the spectrum. And autism always is accompanied by something or the other. It could be mild thing like problems sleeping, or mild ADHD, or it could be really severe like seizures and cognitive impairments, schizophrenia. And many have problems with food intake. Some don't eat well at all. Some eat only one kind of food. You can see an autistic child only eat pizza and that's it, or only chicken nuggets and mac and cheese and that's it. And they're fine eating just that day after day after day and years after years. They have anxiety, depression, and social anxiety, really feel anxious in public places in front of strangers. So again, these are all the things that accompany autism, and a child may have one of these, several of these, or none of these sometimes. And what are the challenges? 1 in 3 children with autism are actually non-verbal. So they are unable to speak, or they just speak but a handful of words. So communication is a big challenge and a big problem. And a lot of these children, like I said, have intellectual disability. So some of them are in the borderline range, like 71 to 85 IQ range, but they still have quite a bit of challenge at that range, because when you combine that with poor communication and all the other challenges they face, that seems quite challenging for that child. And then there are a few that have normal IQ, and there have some that have exceedingly high IQ as well. And wandering is a big problem with autism. So when you have children who are nonverbal, or even if they're verbal and have intellectual disability, they wander, they elope, they just run away. So you always see parents with autistic kids holding on tightly to their son or daughter's hand, or they have an extra door in the house. They have all kinds of monitors on their children. Now you have these Apple AirTags that you throw on the backpack, or attach it to, or put it in the shorts of little kids. Or some of them even have different, like a bracelet or a watch that they wear that has a GPS in it. But it's very, very common. And sometimes it can result in the death of a child because they wander, they get into an accident. And most often what causes a death is drowning. So wandering is a big problem with autism. And bullying, and we'll talk a little bit about that when I describe my children in a few minutes. But nearly 2/3 of children with autism have been bullied. So, and that is a staggering number also. It's in a very expensive condition. It costs about 60,000 per child to raise an autistic child. And it also includes lost wages, because parents have to take children to different kind of therapies and special services. And then they cannot keep up an employment. And then if the child has intellectual disability, the cost increases. It goes all the way up to 90,000 per child. So it's a very expensive condition. And some of these children also have self-injurious behaviors, like they headbang or they bite themselves. Sometimes you see autistic children wearing helmets. And that is because of the dangers of self-injurious behaviors. And mothers of autistic children especially have difficulty in keeping up a job, and they usually cannot sustain employment, or even if they work, they make way less than the regular moms with typical children, and even less than other moms with children with other kinds of disabilities. Then how about adults? Because all these autistic children are going to become adults. Excuse me. So it's now estimated that every year you'll have about 100,000 autistic children will enter adulthood. So they'll graduate out of the free school-based autism services. So autism services like special education is free until age 21. Then afterwards, what do you do? So, and also same with healthcare. Many of autistic adults don't ever see a physician for years and years together after they stop seeing a pediatrician. And they stop seeing a pediatrician at 18. Some of them can continue seeing until age 21. And many are unemployed. They don't enroll in colleges. They don't enroll in any vocational program. And their disability prevents them from holding any job. And even if the state has really good vocational programs and you enroll in it, only 60% of them actually leave that intensive vocational program with a job. So half of adults with autism have never held a paying job. And if you think of 1 in 36 children being diagnosed with autism and half of them never having a job, that is a huge number. So jobs, activities that you teach an autistic adult goes a long way in helping with independence and decreasing the symptoms associated with autism, and helps them live semi-independently and learn some daily living skills. The key with autism is early diagnosis. So how do you diagnose somebody with autism? Some common things. I know these are not physician or health related, but this is something that all lay people must understand and recognize. Because if we recognize, it leads to early diagnosis. If you wait for the pediatrician or a healthcare provider to recognize, the diagnosis can be late, and that leads to late intervention. So if the child doesn't smile, smiling is something that comes on in the first few months of life, the smiling, the cooing sounds that babies make. So if that doesn't happen, if the baby doesn't make eye contact, that's a red flag. Or sometimes they learn how to speak, but then again at age 2 or 1.5, 3, they lose the speech that they've acquired. And then they could have a good eye contact, but then suddenly they lose it. And they don't understand people's expressions or feelings. And overall, they have much, much delayed language development. So if your child doesn't speak in short sentences by age 3, and they're still pointing and saying one word, and they say dog, cat, that's pretty delayed language development. Or echolalia, they keep repeating things that you say, and that's the only form of speech they know, then that's a red flag. And then if children are very, very resistant to any change in their surroundings, or simple things like, okay, now you can't wear this shirt, let's change your shirt to something else, or you need to wear pants for this occasion, and they're extremely resistant and throw tantrums, and it happens every single time, that's a red flag. Some of these kids, like I mentioned before, have very restricted interests. So, for example, there might be a child who only sees Thomas the Train on TV, and that's all the toys that the child ever plays with. And that's it. There's nothing else that holds the child's interest. Then that's a concern. We've also talked about repetitive behaviors like hand flapping, spinning, rocking, those kind of movements. And that's also not normal for a child to do all that continuously. And then there are children that are extremely sensitive to sounds, lights, bright colors, certain tastes, certain food, certain textures. For example, both my boys did not wear jeans until they were in their 11 and 12 years of life. So that's a texture. They have a problem with textures, or one of my son has a really big problem with sounds. So they're very sensitive. And how about the early intervention? What do I mean by early intervention? Early intervention is important because your brain goes through a lot of development in the first few years of life, and you can help improve. Now, you're not going to reverse autism, but you can help improve and help develop the brain by introducing communication and social skills and learning in those first few years. There's ABA, or applied behavioral analysis, that is now being covered by more and more insurances, and a lot of kids are able to utilize that and help with learning behaviors that are expected and that can lead to success, and also minimize behaviors such as rocking or hitting themselves, self-injurious behaviors, or elopement and stuff like that. And of course, the standard therapies, which are very useful, which are speech therapy, occupational therapy. Occupational therapy in these children is very important because it teaches them how to engage in the regular play. Like a 4-year-old is supposed to sit down and play alongside some other kids, and they just introduce normal play behaviors, and along with that, the typical occupational therapy also. And treat associated conditions. Remember, we talked about seizures and ADHD, anxiety, and eating disorders, constipation, diarrhea, sleep problems. So that all that needs to be treated also. One of the major things that I've come across, and myself I have gone through, is denial. So denial is such a huge barrier. When you have parents that are well educated and you expect your child to be as typical as possible and bright and intelligent, and then suddenly they don't start talking, even though you notice all the red flags, you're in denial. Oh, my child can never have autism. That can never happen to my child. Denial can make you lose valuable time, months, sometimes years in early intervention that the child desperately needs. So that's a huge barrier, continues to be a barrier, especially in where I come from, East Asia, South Asia, and also in the Hispanic community. So it's important that we recognize the signs and treat early and build a community around you. The importance of community, I cannot stress on that enough, and we'll talk a little bit later. So the first intervention is called the ECI, or Early Childhood Intervention Service. It's a statewide program. Texas Health and Human Services is the responsible party there, and they provide for children until age 3 with home care therapy such as speech or occupational therapies or play therapy. They have a case manager that's assigned to your child, and they come up with an individualized plan for your child. So if you have to tap into it, that means your child needs to be diagnosed really early, or at least show signs that are concerning enough that ECI services are recommended by the pediatrician so that you can get started. Why this is important is, number one, your child gets treatment early and therapy early. Second thing is, you transition effectively into the public school system after the age 3. So, and the case manager involved is very important there because they help in everything. They help connecting you with schools, with the special needs services in schools, and the point of contact, the evaluations that are needed, and it makes the transition really smooth. So school age, again, 3 to 18, can be really stressful, because you have different kinds of evaluations, and these evaluations take forever, days and days. And then some of you must already be familiar with the ARD process, the admissions review and dismissal committee meetings in school, where you have a special needs representative, a school head, a special needs teacher, and then, of course, you as a parent. And then you also have a psychologist that evaluated your child, and a few others. You all meet together, and then an individualized educational plan or an IEP is developed for your child. And at that time, you are your child's strongest advocate. So you have to say, no, this is what I want my child to have. No, this is not what I think is needed. So your advocacy comes into play there. And then a plan is developed for your child that may include speech or occupational therapy, pull out and special classes, or placing the child completely in a special education classroom separately. So that happens. And then we also already mentioned about applied behavior analysis, or ABA, which we have ABA therapists that work with children, and it's a full-time 40 hours a week program that several parents choose to place their children in that instead of the public school system, or you can do both. Then you also have other programs like floor time or verbal behavior therapy and teach, which all these modified curriculum and different programs that help with communication and behaviors and all the autism symptoms that we discussed about. Then you have private schools, which in Houston, there are several private schools. And you also have your various physicians that are involved at that time, not just your developmental pediatrician, but perhaps a psychiatrist, a neurologist, an autism specialist, a regular pediatrician. And it depends on what other associated conditions the child has. And some may need to use medications. There are not a lot of medications that are approved for autism. There are only a few that are approved for behaviors like irritability related to autism. So usually medication use is mainly for the associated conditions. And a lot of parents use supplements. We don't really have any evidence-based treatment as such for autism right now. ABA has the most evidence. And then in school age, you also have to deal with bullying and transportation for the kid. Your kid cannot just get into the bus and go to school or walk to school. And there are oftentimes no aftercare programs for your children because aftercare requires special assistance. It's not just one teacher with 20 kids sitting and doing their homework. Your child needs one-on-one perhaps, and there's no facility for that in a public school system. So all this come into play in the school years. And some kids are fortunate enough to consider college, depending on where they are intellectually and where the IQ is and what they are able to accomplish. And again, they may not be ready for the regular college experience. Some kids just go to community college and do a few courses, and there are special universities, and we are blessed to be living in an age where there are universities and colleges just for kids on the spectrum or kids with cognitive challenges. And universities such as University of Houston in Clear Lake or University of St. Thomas here, they have special programs for kids on the spectrum. There are vocational colleges and several state-run programs to help with this. And then there are other private programs that work on developing life skills needed, such as grooming, self-care, cooking a few things, taking care of your needs, maybe doing some grocery shopping, counting money, and make sure you get the right change. Things like taking a bus, stranger safety and those things. And there are day programs that adults go to where they're arts and crafts and they do useful things. But remember, most autistic adults, once they are out of the college, hardly any ever utilize all these things that we discussed. It's less than half that participate in any of these things. But these adults or young adults need ongoing support. And that is where the community comes into play. So then after college, it's employment. And employment has a lot of challenges for these children because they have to interview well. They have to impress people during the interview. Then after that, they need to have the skills needed to keep the job going, be successful at their job. They have to interact with several other co-workers. And remember, these kids have a lot of social challenges. And then are they able to live independently, continue to live with mom and dad? Some of them drive, most of them cannot drive. So how do they go from home to job? Are they able to manage money, life skills? And a few are able to get married and have children of their own and live a full independent life. And how are they able to assimilate into the society and the community, and their living arrangement? So it's an ongoing struggle and a challenge and a unique experience, I must say, not just for the autistic child and autistic adult, but the parents, grandparents, and their whole extended family. Now, children with autism that have cognitive challenges, which means they are unable to live independently. Now, these children will need a guardianship, which means when they turn 18, one or both the parents become the guardians of the children, and they have to go through the court process and get that. And some children may not need a guardianship, but they need something like a supported decision making, where the parents tend to help the child decide. And ultimately, it's the child's decision, but that they also have a say. The parents do have a say. And then those that don't have an employment and don't have any means of income once they become adults, you also need to apply for Social Security income for these adults with autism and cognitive challenges who cannot live independently. And health insurance, thank goodness we're able to keep our kids till age 26 on our insurance plans now. And then after that, what happens? We have to apply for Medicaid, and some employers can continue to cover your children beyond the age 26 if they have a disability, if they have a cognitive disability such as autism. And then how do you plan for your children after you're gone? And that's when a special needs trust comes into play. And when you have a trust, you have to appoint a trustee, somebody who oversees the trust. And is there someone that you can trust enough to be your trustee? And then there's a trust advisor, because you may choose to make bank the trustee. And if your bank is a trustee, who advises the bank regarding your child? So do you have family members that in your inner circle that you trust and that are perhaps the same age as your child that will continue to offer these services and help them after you're gone? So the challenge with the children starts from the point of diagnosis, and I don't think it ever ends. But it's also true for all parents, right? When you have children, whether they're autistic or not, your parents are involved, and they have all kinds of challenges. So this is no different, but it's a different spectrum. So I just wanted to share some experiences. My first son, Aaron, he's 18 years old now. So he was born on my 29th birthday. So I turned 29 and he was born on the same day. So both of us have the same birthday. And, my golden child, of course, I was very happy. And he did not show any very early signs, because he was very good with words and pointing objects like ball, cat, mom, dad. And we had a Spanish-speaking nanny, so a lot of Spanish words as well. But then the words did not translate to sentences. And then we started seeing some problems with tantrums. And then my child number 2 came along, because my children are just a year and 5 months apart. And then perhaps we didn't pay attention to the first child, and we thought this is his way of showing, acting out, because he now has a baby brother. So there was a delay in diagnosis, and I'm thankful for my training as a physician at that time, that I was able to recognize something is wrong with him around the age 2.5, because he was still at words only, no sentences. And we were able to potty train him, all that part was normal. And that's when I consulted speech therapy, occupational therapy, early childhood intervention programs, got him in all kinds of therapy. But when the time came for the transition between the early childhood intervention and the public school system, he underwent an evaluation that put him at, he's doing just as well as a typical child. He doesn't need any special program in the public school. I don't think he could use the pre-K program that they have in the school at that time. So which kind of disappointed me, because I had worked really, really hard with this son to get him to be able to recognize colors, shapes, alphabets, and all my hard work actually prevented him from getting into a good preschool program, because at the time of evaluation, they thought, he's doing quite well. So I put him in a preschool, private preschool at that time. And during that time, I also started my fellowship in MD Anderson. And then, he did okay in the preschool, but definitely there were classic signs of autism. Then he became kindergarten aged, and he went to a public school. He went to Roberts Elementary here in the medical center, very nice public school. And it was a challenge because, again, he was doing well with reading, writing, math, numbers at that level. But socially, he was now nowhere close to the other children in the class. He was unable to be in a regular kindergarten, but they did manage to keep him for the whole year. And he did not have any friends. He did not, because again, communication and social skills were a big challenge. And at that time, for first grade, they decided to transfer his school to another school. And then we also had moved at that time. He went to Coulter Elementary, which is another very nice school, and people moved to be zoned to that school. And there he was placed in a regular class setting, but 2 hours a day he was pulled out for one-on-one and with a small group of other children and a special education teacher. And that was very helpful. He did really well in that setting. He made a few friends. I would go and have lunch with him on and off at school. But I still noticed he was eating alone, and there are other kids that were just looking at him and laughing at him. So he didn't quite fit in. Then 2 years later of continuing to be in that school, they decided he needs to be in a structured learning classroom, which means they pull him out of regular classroom with typical kids and actually put him in a structured learning classroom with only other autistic children all day long. And that was a mess because there were some children that he could learn from that were more advanced than him. But there are also a lot of children that were not as advanced as him. And they were all together with the same teacher and aide, and it was a mess. It didn't work out for him. That's when I pulled him out and put him in a private school in Houston called the Westview School, which was a wonderful school, and brought me to tears to know that such schools exist for my child. And he did well in that school. That was his second grade. And after the second grade was over, third grade onwards, they moved to a more vigorous academic program. And they felt like he was probably not going to be able to keep up. Until second grade, they focused mainly on, small skills, but more classroom behaviors, being able to follow a lesson, homework, but they don't really focus so much on academics. So at that time, it was recommended that we move to another private school that is best for him, and they recommended the Monarch School. And I went and interviewed. The campus was extraordinary. The buildings were so good. The teachers, the kids, again, it felt like a dream. I didn't know something like that was there in Houston. And they took him for 2 days for trial, and I didn't know whether he would get in or not. And finally, they told me, yes, they have space for him next year. So I enrolled him in Monarch School into third grade, and now he's in 12th grade in Monarch School. He's a senior. So it's been a really good fit for my son. And so for Aaron, this is my oldest child. So where next? So right before this lecture, he's in the pool right now, and I was sitting next to him outside, and I said, what do you want to do next year? So he told me apparently his school has a special senior year program where you could repeat 12th grade, and he wants to do that. So he said, Mom, I'm not ready to graduate. I want to go do 12th grade again next year to be a special senior. So I didn't know that it was possible. So I'm going to talk to my husband and see if that's what he would recommend, or there's also a transitional program in his school until the age 30 or 35 that you can actually learn and do some work programs and continue to learn. He wants to be a cook. He loves to cook and decorate food and all that. So let's see if that's where he'll end up. I have guardianship for him because he has cognitive challenges, and his IQ is less than 85, and he's unable to manage money or a checkbook, or go shop somewhere independently, no stranger safety or anything. He's a lovely child, keeps us laughing all the time, very cute and funny, but intellectually he's always going to be like a 10-year-old perhaps, or 11-year-old at the most, 12. So we got guardianship, which took almost a year. We started when he was 17 and a half, or 17 and a few months, and we finally just got the guardianship for him. So it's a multi-step process. You get a very thorough neuropsychological developmental evaluation. Then you go to an occupational therapist to get evaluation for executive functioning. And then after that, then you file your papers in the court. You need to have a fantastic lawyer, which I do. And Lisa Hayes, which many of you may already have heard, we use Lisa Hayes, she's our attorney. And then after that, we have you have a policeman come and serve him the papers, and that was a fun experience. He came home and Aaron was served the papers saying, "Are you sure you want to give away your rights to your parents?" And he folds his arms and says, "Yes, sir." So he didn't know what that meant, but he said, "Yes, sir." Took the papers, and you have visits from social workers and attorneys that the court appoints for your son. They come home, check, make sure he has a safe environment, he has enough food in the refrigerator, that we are able to take care of him. Then you finally go to court, you have a hearing with the judge. My son was exempt from being there, thank God, because he would have gone and asked the judge all about his parents and where he came from and how old he is. That's what he loves to do when he meets people. He wants to know their history. So then we were granted guardianship. So that was a long process, but we were in good hands with our attorney. And then you need a special needs trust. Normally, when you have a special needs child, you get a special needs trust, which gives all your assets, a part of your assets or whatever you want to give your child goes in there, and that does not prevent them from getting Medicaid or SSI in the future. So the special needs trust, usually a sibling or somebody else is a trustee. But then remember, I have 2 children on the autism spectrum, and I did not, don't have the luxury of appointing another child as a trustee. So I actually appointed the bank as the trustee, and my nephews as the trust managers. And along with the special needs trust, you have documents that you prepare, which talks about what your child needs and what are the how do you want them to distribute the money. For example, he's allowed to get 1 iPad every year if he wants. He needs so many sets of new clothes every year. That's what I want him to have. And he uses only the Oral-B toothbrush, and he needs a new head replaced for the toothbrush every year. That all has to come from the special needs trust. So this document was, it was fun preparing it because I didn't realize there were so many things about my son that are unique. So we have the special needs trust, and again, we used Lisa Hayes for it, and we used Emery Price as our bank. Emery Price is also where is a financial advisor. So the same person as Emery Price is the trustee. So that is my journey with Aaron, my first child. And my second child is Anna. Again, he was born a year and 5 months after Aaron was born. And this child was a neglected child right from the beginning, because as soon as he was born and he was around 6 months old, it was when I realized that Aaron has some problem with his speech and he could have a developmental delay. So Although I spent time with Anna, gave him all my love, time as much as I could, my attention, focus, my thoughts were all around my older son. And he had early signs of speech problems and a delay, which I attributed to, oh, this child is around my older son who hardly speaks. So that's why he's not learning the language appropriately. And we didn't send him to a private school until he was almost 3 years old. Reason being, there were so many therapies for my older son that there was really no way we could put him in some. So he stayed home with the nanny and with us. So we missed all the early signs. And also he was a little more advanced than Arin. So he was a smart kid. At 18 months, he knew all the alphabets. He could recite them. And by 2 years, he could even write them. So we actually thought he was going to be a genius. So autism was not at the back of our mind at all. But he showed signs in pre-K. Again, very socially not able to mingle with the other kids, unable to understand a few things or follow directions as well, throwing tantrums if suddenly he had to change classrooms or go out for, PE when it is sunny, things like that, or to get into the pool when he didn't want to, or wear certain kind of things. So then we recognized the signs. The teachers were very helpful. At that time, he was in Bertha Alice, which is the Jewish community center here in Meyerland area. He was in that preschool. And luckily, they helped me get a diagnosis. They referred me to a place that could squeeze him in quickly. The pediatrician was helpful also. And he was diagnosed with autism as well at age 5. So it was pretty late. And at that time, Bertha Alice has a program called the STARS program, which is a special needs program for kids with autism. And it's a 1-year program or 2-year program until they're kindergarten age. And they quickly absorbed him into that program, which provided intensive speech and occupational therapy and one-on-one. So within the same school, he just moved classrooms. And they helped with everything that ECI helped with my older child. So they helped get him into a public school, again, which is Coulter Elementary, into a special PALS program, which is, again, preschool, half regular, half special needs, which was fantastic. And that was kindergarten. And after that, when he entered first grade, Coulter said, let's send him to Herod Elementary, because he's way too ahead to be in the structured learning classroom that Arin was, and that my older son was, and he did not fit into it. So they said, let's send him to a different school where he can continue to be with typical kids, but be pulled out for some special classes with other kids with special needs, and then part of the day be in a special classroom. So we moved him to Herod Elementary. The first year I thought went okay. Second year, again, every year you have these ARD meetings, admissions, review, and dismissal meetings. And it's the second year, they said, okay, he's doing well. We're going to cut back some services. So he spent more and more time in the typical regular classroom. And at that time, a few times I was able to park the car close to the Herod Elementary and then watch him in the playground, because I knew his lunch break was at my lunch break, so I could quickly drive there and see him. And at that time, what I saw a lot of bullying. And I saw him cry, sit alone, him reaching out to other kids to go play, and them laughing and then pushing him. And, the teacher can't always have eyes on your child. The teacher has so many kids. And at that point, I recognized that he needs to go to Westview School, the same school that Arin was, the 1 year, that school that mesmerized me the first time. So this happened in September, and I quickly contacted the private school. They arranged for him to visit his evaluation, and October 23rd, he moved to the Westview private school. And he stayed there all the way till 6th grade. Remember, Aryan in 3rd grade, they said he's not able to keep up academically and we had to move him to another school. But this Westview school kept him all the way till 6th grade, and he did really well, flourished, made friends, did sports, and gained so much of confidence, that things that I didn't expect. And then from there, he moved to the Gateway Academy, where he is now in 10th grade. And this school has been just outstanding. He has so many friends. He's in the school basketball team. This is a school for children with learning differences. And he goes to camps. He goes, there are so many things that a regular child does that he participates in. There's prom, there's school play, school dances that he's dancing in. And this is a regular school experience tailored to my child and my child's needs, and is flourishing so very much. And what does he want to do next? Well, because he does not want to leave Houston and his Houston Astros, he wants to stay in Houston because we have season tickets to the Houston Astros, and he does not want to give up on that. He wants to go to the University of St. Thomas. I want him to go to Beacon College in Florida, which is the high functioning autism special needs college, and he could get a degree, a 4-year degree in computer science and computer in informatics, but no, he wants to be in Houston. So maybe that's where he'll go. Now, Arnav also, despite his autism, he's very innocent, very gullible. People can take him for a ride. He's going to need a lot of help from us as long as we live, in helping navigate this big bad world out there, because he's such a sweet guy, that trusts everybody. So we also have a special need trust for him, but with flexibility, where he has a little more say, and he can talk to the bank and reason and get what he wants out of it. So that's also in play. So that's my second child, and he's 16 years old now. So what I learned through my autism journey is, number one, be a very fierce advocate for your child. And I learned that a little too late, because a lot of things that I got in the private schools perhaps are achievable in the public school setting. But I just wasn't fierce enough. I didn't know much. I moved to the US in my 20s, so it's a much later than my school and college years. I didn't know the system here, and I did not have a strong community around me at that time. So, but over the years, I've seen several other moms and dads who are fierce advocates and who fought and got for their children in the public school system, including, let's say, a one-on-one special needs aide to shadow them all day long, for example. I never even knew that was possible. So be a strong advocate, communicate frequently with your special needs advisor in the public school, or teachers and principal. Be in the school, volunteer, show your face, be there all the time as much as your work allows you. And you need a community of autism parents. So during the time that I moved them to private schools, and right around that time, I joined some autism parent groups here and there. And with the help of one of my colleagues, I also started a special needs parents group in MD Anderson, where I work. And some of these people have become my strongest friends now and family, and I've learned from them. Some of them have learned from me, and then we continue to help others that join our group. So I have this community at work, outside of work, also in the Indian community. So you have to have a community of parents that can help guide you. Otherwise, you go through what I went through in the first few years, which is challenging. Have good friends, family, and colleagues around you. You're going to have a stressful time at home. For most people, stress is at work and then you come home and you relax, but you're going to be having a stressful time at home. So you need to have a very calm work atmosphere. So very important to have such colleagues and friends around you, which I'm blessed with. And take time for yourself. Do things that you love. You know, for example, I'm a tennis player. Excuse me. I'm a USTA 4.0 tennis league player. I play 4 times a week. Used to play at 8:30 to 10:30 p.m. after the kids go to bed. Now I play when they're awake. I play from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday, and also Saturday and Sunday morning. Then I'm a Houston Astros fan. We go to 40 games a year at least. I do yoga twice a week. You know, take some time out with your spouse. Make sure you have your time together. Go out, go watch movies, go do something fun. And so do something for yourself, do something with your significant other, and do something as a family. So it's important that you compartmentalize these 3 times. And if you don't do that, it's not an easy road. You know, you take care of yourself, like on the flight, you know, what the flight attendant said, if the air pressure goes down, put the oxygen on yourself before you help a child. It's true here as well. So take care of yourself first. And keep a positive attitude. Be grateful for small successes. That, like my older son Arin was able to use a knife successfully and cut an apple this past weekend, and we celebrated. You know, that's a skill that a 10-year-old could probably do, or an 8-year-old typical child. But for us, it's a big skill. So celebrate small victories, plan ahead, because once you have a special needs trust, guardianship, things like that taken care of, you can just relax. You know, you'll never think, what if something happens to me? What's going to happen to your child? Because you've taken care of all the things you need to. And help others, because it's a full circle. When you help others, you receive help in the same way. No child is alike. You learn from them just like they learn from you, and you help build an autism community or a special needs community. So that is my experience with the autism, with my boys and raising them. And I hope I've done the best job with them as possible. But I'm here.